A Message from the Son of Man, Part 2, Finding the Way. Biblical Hebrew is written with consonants, allowing interpretations to emerge through multiple possible vowels, word divisions, and syntactical relationships. This flexibility permits layered meanings, wordplay, and theological nuance to coexist within a single consonantal string, two Torahs in one text. When the Hebrew scriptures were translated into Greek, the translators faced a problem. The Torah and the Tanakh use specific divine names and forms, not generic terms. We see the consonants Y, H, W, H, the tetragrammaton. We see LH, which can be read as Eloah and Ella. We see LHM, Elohim, a morphologically plural form that functions in complex ways across the text. These were not interchangeable words. They carried theological weight, identity, and nuance. The Greek translators understood this, so they did not translate casually. They made deliberate lexical choices. YHWH was rendered as Kyrios, Lord, not as Theos, not as a general word for deity. Kyrios became the Greek marker for Yahweh. LHM, Elohim, was rendered as Theos, again, not arbitrarily. Theos functioned as the Greek equivalent for the Hebrew LHM. In other contexts, Greek had other options: Thea for goddess, Theoi for gods, the Amita for goddess mother. The Septuagint translators consistently reserved specific Greek terms for specific Hebrew forms. That consistency tells us something important. They were aware that Y, H, W, H, and LHM were not generic religious words. They required stable Greek equivalents. The shift from Hebrew consonants to Greek titles to later English renderings was not neutral. This is a complete list of Philo's rules for identifying and solving enigmas. For this exploration, we will encounter just 5: the doubling of a phrase, the repetition of statements previously made. An entirely different meaning may also be found by disregarding the ordinarily accepted division of the sentence into phrases and clauses, and by considering a different combination of the words, the part of a word, the artificial interpretation of a single expression. The way according to Mark 1, 2-3. As it has been written in the prophets, "Behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way before you, a voice of one calling in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight." Here, Mark echoes Isaiah 43, which is, "A voice is crying in a wilderness, prepare the way of Yahweh, make straight in a desert a highway for our Elohim." However, the same string of Hebrew consonants can also translate Isaiah 43 as follows: "And a voice of one crying, Father, Mother knowing, Son is the face of the way. Yahweh will be rectified, Son of Father Light, the mother man/woman of Elah, Elohim." Mark 8 verse 27. "And Jesus went forth and his disciples into the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and in the way he was questioning his disciples, saying to them, Who do men say I am?" English translations often smooth this to "on the way," but "in the way" is the literal Greek. Mark deliberately places the identity question inside the way, not merely during travel. Mark 10:17. "And as he is going forth into the way, one having run and having kneeled to him was questioning him, Good teacher, what may I do that I may inherit continuous life?" Again, most English versions smooth this to "on the way," but that is idiomatic, not literal. Mark 10:32, "And they were in the way going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was going before them, and they were amazed, and following they were afraid. And having again taken the 12, he began to tell them the things about to happen to him." Summary across Mark, consistent and deliberate. Mark 8:27, "in the way." Mark 10:17, "into the way." Mark 10:32, "in the way." Mark repeatedly locates teaching, identity, and destiny in or into the way, not merely on the way to a destination. Mark 10:46, "And they come to Jericho, and as he is going forth from Jericho with his disciples and a great multitude, a son of Timaeus, Bartimaeus the blind, was sitting beside the way begging." Mark's choices are deliberate and revealing. Bartimaeus is not yet in the way, he is beside it until he sees and follows. Mark 10:47-48. "And having heard that it is Jesus the Nazarene, he began to cry out, and to say, The Son of David, Jesus, deal kindly with me. And many were rebuking him that he might keep silent. But the more abundantly he cried out, Son of David, deal kindly with me." Philo's rule number 3. The repetition of Son of David says, enigma. According to Wikipedia, Hillel the Elder came from Babylon to Israel. although he was descended from David. His descendant Judah Hanasi traced his lineage through both the female lineage of the tribe of Benjamin, whose mother was Rachel, and the family of David. When Josephus speaks of Hillel's great-grandson, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, as belonging to a very celebrated family, he probably refers to the glory the family owed to the activity of Hillel and Rabban Gamaliel Hazakan. Only Hillel's brother Shebna is mentioned. He was a merchant, whereas Hillel devoted himself to studying the Torah whilst also working as a woodcutter. Hillel was a son of David and a carpenter. Mark 10:51-52. And answering, Jesus says to him, "What do you will I may do to you?" And the blind man said to him, "Rabboni, that I may see again." And Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith has saved you." And immediately he saw again, and was following Jesus in the way. The core meanings of sozo, translated saved, are heal, restore, make whole, bring safely through. According to Wikipedia, Josephus calls Hillel's grandson Rabban Gamaliel Hazakan. Rabboni is used just 2 times in the New Testament. Mark 10:52, Rabboni, that I may see, and immediately he saw again. John 20:16. Jesus says to her, Mary. Having turned, she says to him, Rabboni, that is to say, teacher. Both times Rabboni is associated with seeing the truth about the man called Jesus. Rabban Gamaliel was Hillel's grandson. Hillel was a carpenter and a descendant of the house of David and Rachel. HLLL, rendered Hallel El Ella, is translated Praise El Ella. GMLL, rendered Gamma El Ella, is translated El Ella within. Matthew 7:13-14. Go in through the narrow gate, because wide is the gate and broad the way that is leading to the destruction, and many are those going in through it. How narrow is the gate and compressed the way that is leading to life, and few are those finding it. Matthew 21:32. For John came to you in the way of righteousness. Matthew ignores Mark's in the way and into the way. Matthew hides Mark's meaning of the way behind a descriptive term for gates, roads, and behavior. Matthew uses Mark as a source, but edits him aggressively. This is the foundation of the two-source hypothesis. Near consensus in New Testament studies, approximately 90% of Mark appears in Matthew. Matthew follows Mark's order, but Matthew rewrites Mark constantly. This isn't neutral copying, it's editorial revision. Matthew restores law, authority, and hierarchy. Mark emphasizes misunderstanding disciples, secrecy, failure, the way as lived path. Matthew replaces this with structured teaching blocks, obedience to Torah, church authority, Peter elevated on this rock. This is a re-centering move, not accidental. Matthew reframes the way into commandments. Mark reports that people are into, and beside the way. Matthew shifts to teaching, commandments, righteousness, final judgment scenes. Matthew contains way language but misdirects it. Matthew explicitly replaces Mark's open-ended ending. Mark ends, earliest form, at 16:8, fear, silence, unresolved tension. Matthew adds resurrection appearances, authority, mission mandate, institutional continuity. That's a replacement ending, not an add-on. Early Christian reception confirms the intent to replace Mark's gospel with Matthew's revisions. Church tradition ranks Matthew first, treats Mark as a summary, and often ignores Mark's distinctiveness. This reception history reflects how Matthew was meant to function as a replacement. Most critical scholars agree that Matthew was written with Mark open in front of him and designed his text to correct, clarify, expand, and ultimately replace Mark's version of Jesus the Nazarene. Mark preserves the way of the Nazarenes. Matthew reframes Jesus into Torah teacher from Nazareth, lawgiver, and founder of church authority. The evidence strongly suggests that Matthew was intended to supersede and perhaps replace Mark. Mark's midrash preserved a truth too challenging to Paul to leave uncorrected. The way, according to Luke 1:76. And you, child, prophet of the highest will you be called, for you will go before the face of the Lord, to prepare his ways. Luke does not equate Yahweh with the way. Luke writes of his ways, plural. Luke 3:4, as it has been written in the scroll of the words of Isaiah the prophet, a voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight. Luke 7:27, this is he concerning whom it has been written, behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way before you. The word translated prepare is the Greek hetoimasate, chate I, defined as put in order, make ready, arrange, set in readiness, reconfigured, reoriented, rechanneled, redirected, dismantled, and realigned. According to Luke, Yahweh's traditional ways, including the Shamate emphasis on merciless retribution and blood sacrifice, must be dismantled and realigned so they no longer obstruct union with the way of Yahzus, the Nazarene. Luke 9:57-58, and it came to pass, as they are going on in the way, a certain one said to him, I will follow you wherever you may go, Lord. And Jesus said to him, the foxes have holes, and the birds of the sky places of rest, but the Son of Man has nowhere he may recline the head. Luke 20:21. And they questioned him, saying, Teacher, we have known that you say and teach correctly, and do not receive a person, but in truth teach the way of Theos. Luke is precise. Where Yahweh appears as Greek Kyrios, he speaks of his ways, plural. But when Jesus is praised for teaching the way and truth, Luke uses Theos, the Greek equivalent of Elohim, not Kyrios. Luke went to great lengths to restore Mark's revelations regarding the way of Yahzus the Nazarene. He addressed his work to Theophilus, an enigma that points to the theologian Philo of Alexandria, and the method to be used to solve enigmas. Philo's Rule 16. Artificial interpretation of a single expression solves more than 2,346 enigmas in the King James Version of the Hebrew Bible. LHM, translated God, is an example of an artificial interpretation. The im suffix creates the plural gods. LHM can be rendered lihem, translated bread. But most notably, LHM can be accurately rendered Ella M and correctly translated goddess mother. Luke attempted to repair the damage which Matthew inflicted on Mark's midrash, but Paul's ministry and letters were sowing confusion. The author of Acts could see the growing success of Paul's Jesus from Nazareth and Shammai-focused doctrine. And so he made it clear that the Nazarene did not identify Jesus as a teacher from Nazareth. He reveals through enigmas that the arch-enemy of Jesus was Paul. The author of Acts, possibly Polycarp, bishop of Smyrna, just before he was burned at the stake, tied his enigmatic composition to Luke by addressing Theophilus, thus pointing to the theologian Philo of Alexandria, whose method would solve the puzzles. Acts 9:2, so that if he found any belonging to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Acts 19:9, some became stubborn, speaking evil of the way before the crowd. Acts 19:23, about that time there arose no little disturbance concerning the way. Acts 22:4, I persecuted the way to the death. Acts 24:14, and I confess this to you, that according to the way that they call a sect, so I serve the Theos of the fathers. Acts 24:5, for having found this man a pestilence, and moving a dissension to all the Jews through the world, also a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. Here, the author of Acts ties the way to the sect of the Nazarenes. This forced Paul's disciples to claim the way of the Nazarene was invented after Paul's Christianity in opposition to it. The very reason Stephen reversed critical details in his enigmatic speech before being stoned, Acts 7:3-9, John 1:23, he said, I am a voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord, as Isaiah the prophet said. John's version reveals the shift. The work is no longer to prepare Yahweh's ways, but to make straight the way itself, signaling alignment rather than arrangement. John 14:4, and to where I go a way you have known, and the way you have known. John 14:5. Thomas says to him, Lord, we have not known to where you go away, and how are we able to know the way? John 14:6. Jesus says to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father if not through me. I am plays an important role in the Torah, and many scholars suggest John is pointing to it. Specifically, Exodus 3:14, and Elohim says to Moses, I am that which I am. He also says, Thus you say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Adding context to Exodus 3:14 to 15. Exodus 3:4, and Yahweh sees that he has turned aside to see, and Elohim calls to him out of the midst of the bush and says, Moses, Moses, and he says, Here I. Notably, Moses turns aside from his path in order to see, and Yahweh observes the turning. It is Elohim who issues the call, and Moses responds, Here I, not here I am, but here I. Then Exodus 3:13 says, And Moses says to Elohim, Behold, I am coming to the sons of Israel, and have said to them, The Elohim of your fathers has sent me to you, and they have said to me, What is his name? What do I say to them? Exodus 3:14 answers the question, and Elohim says to Moses, I am that which I am, and also says, Thus you say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. The same Hebrew consonants with Elohist vowels and spaces reveals Jesus, the Nazarenes version of Exodus 3:14, and said Elah mother to Moses, I am Sarah, let it be said thus to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Exodus 3:15, and Elohim says again to Moses, Thus you say to the sons of Israel, Yahweh, Elohim of your fathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name for all time, and this is my memorial to generation and generation. The same Hebrew consonants with alternate vowels and spaces create the Elohist Hillel version of Exodus 3:15. And said again Elah mother to Moses, Thus to sons of Israel, Yahweh is not, alas, father, mother, Elah of Abraham, Elah of Isaac, and Elah of Jacob. Man of Elah was sent to you, and this is the name Elah mother, and this is to be remembered generation to generation. I am is Sarah. Recall Genesis 17:1. Abram was 99 years old when El Shaddai, translated El with breasts, appeared to him and changed his name to Abraham, translated Father of Compassion. At Genesis 17:15 to 16 it says, And LHM says to Abraham, Sarai your wife, you do not call her name Sarai, for Sarah is her name. The name change comes directly from El Shaddai. Sarah is renamed before Isaac is conceived. Her identity is elevated in advance of fruitfulness. Genesis 35:9 says, And Elohim says to him, Your name is Jacob. Your name is no longer called Jacob, but Israel is your name, and his name is called Israel. According to www.biblehub.com, Yisrael is derived from Sarah and El. Definition, God strives, another name of Jacob and his descendants. Joseph the Nasir's conception. Genesis 30:22 says, And Elohim remembers Rachel and listened. El opens her womb. Jacob is not present when Rachel conceives Joseph. Rachel's conception follows divine remembrance and the action of El and Elohim. Genesis 35:19-20 says, And Rachel dies and is buried in the way to Ephrathah, which is Bethlehem. And Jacob sets up a standing pillar over her grave, which is the standing pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. Ephrathah is the older poetic name for Bethlehem. It is rooted in the Hebrew consonants PRT, defined as fruitfulness, bursting forth, origin. Throughout the Hebrew Bible, Ephrath is consistently associated with Rachel, maternal death and birth, remembrance, and the emergence of leadership through the feminine line of compassion rather than royal power. Rachel dies in the way to Bethlehem. Jacob is now called Israel. Israel builds a memorial tower. Rachel becomes the marker of the way, not the end of it. Bethlehem, Bethlehem, translated house of bread, and Betulahem, translated virgin mother, enters the Nazarene tradition through Rachel as she is transformed into a baker, who, with her son Joseph, serve in the court of Pharaoh. El Shaddai renames women and men. El and Elah open wombs. The Virgin Mother marks the way. Betulahem identifies Aisha women who preserve and pass on the lineage from the way of Sarah plus El, which is Israel. The secret of the way, according to John, I am is identified at Exodus 3:14 as Sarah, Abraham's wife. Together they are father-mother of Israel, the way of the Nazarene before the slaughter at Mount Carmel, 1 Kings 18:20-40. The way in Hebrew is Darak. Rachel is translated the way of El. Rachel is Joseph's mother who died on the way to Bthlhm, Genesis 39:19. The truth in Hebrew is Emet, associated with the Egyptian goddess Ma'at, the daughter of Ra, who cannot rule without Ma'at. The life in Hebrew is Hava, translated Eve. In a Mediterranean world shaped by Egypt, Judea, and Greece, this maps naturally as I am Sarah, wife of Abraham, also known as Asherah. Father El is Ab-El, equally valid as Baal. The way, Derek of El, hidden in the name Raquel. The truth Emet, Mahat, right order of Mahat. The life Eve, Hava, living breath. Thomas asks, how are we able to know the way? Jesus answers, Sarah, Rachel, Ma'it, Eve, Elah, M. The secret of the way, according to John, Micah's daughter Jerusalem prophecy, and you, O tower of the flock, hill of daughter Zion, to you it shall come, the former dominion shall come, the sovereignty of daughter Jerusalem. The same Hebrew consonants can be rendered and translated, and the mother, great glorious tower, daughter Zion, to you shall it come, to you shall come dominion, the former kingdom of daughter, teacher of Isha, of Elah mother. Philo's number 3, repetition of statements signals the enigma prevails here. Thomas asks, how are we able to know the way? Jesus answers, Sarah, Rachel, Ma'at, Eve, also known as Elah mother, not Yahweh, not sacrificial lambs, not my blood. Jesus the Nazarene taught the way of compassion and mercy of Isha women. Genesis 1:1 BRSTBRLHM can be translated in multiple ways, but one is not correct. In the beginning, God created is incorrect. Barisit bara Elohim is translated correctly. In the beginning, gods created. Yes, gods, plural. The following options are all correct. Son of man, father light, Elah mother. As son of man and son of Elah mother. As son of man comes forth by passage through Elah mother. The man called Zeus devoted his life to revealing the way of Nazarenes and his reverence for mothers, wives, and daughters. Oh, the irony. SLM Isha Elah M Shalom. Peace, Pax Amolux.